You may remember this resin art experiment I did. So again, I'm just using baby lotion. I haven't tested anything else. Lots of you have asked if it would work with other stuff. I haven't got that far with the experiments yet. Others have also tried it with Vaseline. Let's lift the stencil up. The swipe and wipe is an epic technique, but really has got some texture. You can't colour it. This is an epic upgrade. Right, we are back, and this one is going to be epic. Absolutely epic. So many of you will remember the swipe and wipe technique that I come up with using baby lotion. Now, other channels have done this with Vaseline also. It does work. Use whatever you want, really. But we're limited with it because we kind of have to, after it's cured, colour. Unless you want to keep it clear, that is entirely up to you. But we have to then colour the empty areas afterwards. And there's no way of mixing mica powders in with the lotion or Vaseline. It just won't bond to the resin. It won't work that way. So, Let's Resin have sent me a new kit they're doing, which contains lots of stencils and 2 swiping tools. But we're going to be doing things a little bit differently this time. We're going to be using something you've seen me play around with a bit on the channel so far. And we're still only unlocking the potential of combining this stuff with resin art. So it's not going to be so much a swipe and wipe, but we are going to be using it with the stencils to create the same thing, but we can brush it with colours. We can brush it, we can do so much with it. Use your imagination. But we are going to be playing around. I have had a look at these already. This one is all numbers and characters, and we've also got some interesting textures which we are going to be using, so I'm going to keep those out. And this pack here is just full of different shapes and designs, but this is where it can get really interesting, because there are so many different stencil designs out there. You've seen me use some before. I've even got these Halloween-y style ones which fit perfectly inside my 10 centimeter coaster mold, and that's how I did the swipe and wipe for this one. So I've got Christmas themed ones. I've got so many different stencils, and you can apply this to any stencil of any size, any shape. You can cut this stuff down and reuse it over and over again with just some hot water. But I'm going to show you a couple of different ideas that you can do with this stuff. It's limitless, not just for resin. If you're doing printing, lots of different things that you could do with this. Yeah, I mean, I was going to go through them all, but I'd be here forever. There's lots of different shapes that you could use for this. I'll pop the link in the description box below. You don't have to go and buy them, but you can see what designs are on there if you click on the link. As for patterns, it's tricky to see because I've got a white silicone mat. But the one that we are going to be using is this one here. Reminds me of my nan's old curtains. What you do is just put the bar of the resin clay in the hot water. It needs to be 90 degrees Celsius. Just be careful, I don't want you burning yourselves. And just wait for the bar to soften up. And every now and again, all I'm doing is just taking the bar out and squishing it flat to the size that I want. That's all I'm doing. Just going to squish that flat, pop it back in, and repeat the process until it's the size that I want, like I just said. I think that would do. It's quite thin. Just popping that down onto my silicone mat. I'm going to take my stencil, place that on top with the design where I want it. I haven't got a rolling pin. I'm just going to use my mug. All I'm doing is applying pressure over the whole piece and just rocking it and rolling it out a bit like pastry. And the good thing is, if you go wrong and it doesn't look the way you want it to, wait for it to cool down, peel your stencil off, put it back in the water, and repeat. There is no waste with this stuff. It can be used over and over again. And just make sure your cup is not textured if you are using a cup, because that's going to imprint on there obviously. That has had a few minutes to cool down. I should be able to peel that away now, leaving our embossing sheet just like that. Absolutely crazy. So you've seen me try this, well, many of you have seen me try and use this with UV resin as a mold, but the heat generated through the UV resin can kind of cause a bit of a sticky situation, because this stuff melts at 90 degrees Celsius and UV resin heats up, and it can create a mess. But I'm going to show you something that I did yesterday doing this exact method, and it worked perfectly using UV resin. So I have a new mold, and this one's shiny. Always keep the wrapper for these because it's so much easier to just push that on and keep it dust free. It's only the half of the wrapper, so I haven't got to fight getting it in and out of the packaging every time I want to use it. All I'm going to do now is just fill up one of these heart-shaped cavities with UV resin using the Resin Rockers Clear Hard, making sure it's flat with the top of the mold, and then giving that a cure. It really is that easy. And just make sure there's no bubbles in there, because you don't want bubbles to show with the effect that I'm going to show you. And just give it a cure. Then you are left with a clear heart resin cabochon like this. Now, if you're doing this with epoxy, an alternative for you would be to use an existing shape that you've got and cut around it, mark it and cut around it, and then you can pour your epoxy and then place this shape over the back. It won't sink, it will just rest on the surface. So you could brush that with your colours and then carefully place that on the back of the heart, and when it's cured, peel it away. But I'm just going to do it this way because I'm using UV resin. I want to be able to see if there's any trapped bubbles. You could, if you wanted to risk it, just lay that on top and cure it. It's entirely up to you. I mean, this is early days. There's going to be lots more of different ways and variations of doing this. Pop that sheet back on. And then just put that to one side. And then out comes a greeny kind of teal, turquoisey nail powder. This is where you can also use your imagination with chameleon powders, interference powders, pretty much the same as that, mica powders, whatever you want. You can just tailor it to whatever you want. And I'm just going to brush that all over this textured surface. Like so. And that's leaving really nice coloured texture effect. And it sticks, it actually sticks to it really well. It's like it was made for it. There's no patches, it really does apply nicely. So now I just want to work out roughly how I want the design to be inside my heart. Because once it's there, it's there. Now, also, cutting it to the heart shape and doing it that way could also be a less risky option for this next stage. But you know what I'm like? I like a risk or two. I am just going to do it the way that I like to do it. And that is applying a small drop of resin onto it, UV resin, making sure there's no bubbles. And you don't want to use any heat to pop any bubbles with this because it's going to ruin the resin clay. I'm going to take our heart and we're just going to place that on top of that resin and just allow that resin time to flow out. If there's not enough, push it down and see if it spreads. If not, lift it up and apply a tiny amount more. The risk we have with this is that we apply too much and it oozes out from all of the sides, creating a mess and more of a cleanup afterwards. So once you are happy, I've got a little bit of spillage around the outside, nothing to panic about. Just going to give that a cure under the lamp. So now you just have to leave it to just cool down before you try and pull that away, because that is when the mess can happen. So the reason why this way works is because we're not using that much resin to be able to create too much heat. So if you were to lay this over the back of your mold and cure it that way, you've got a risk of too much heat being generated and melting this stuff. So I think this is the safest way because there is less. I'm being impatient. I'm just going to try and peel mine now. I would wait a few more minutes, but there you can see we've got perfect print, and this can be either reused again as it is, just brush it again and reuse it. If you cut these into squares, just put them into something protective and use it at a later date, or like I said, just clean it up, reheat it and make a different one. So we've got a little bit of mess, just going to cut off. It is only thin. Put that in my spillage pot so I can hide them little snippets in other pieces if I need to. So there we have it as it is. The next stage is optional. I mean, a solid coloured background would be best, but I'm going to show you something that I did which absolutely blew my mind. We are just going to use some black UV resin in all of the what would we call them? The embossed areas. Just those areas. Now you might think that's going to take you some time. It really doesn't. As long as you don't go over the edge. You just have to be careful. But I'll show you the way that I did it. This is pre-mixed from yesterday, so I don't want to mix up any more when I've still got some. It's just black mica powder in my UV resin. And you'll find when you drop it in, it spreads into most of the gaps itself. Really, really easily. I'm just using a point of this stick just to work it into any of the gaps. Cure as you go if you want, if you're doing this. Just in case you do have an accident, at least you know these areas are cured before you move on. But it really doesn't take that long. And again, I enjoy stuff like this. It really is. Attention to detail and quite therapeutic. So it took me about 15 minutes. That is it. And I'm just going to cure that under my big lamp. So this is what it looks like from the front now. See what a difference that makes, and it really makes it look 3D. I've got some tiny micro bubbles in there, but it's not noticeable from a difference. And look at that green flash. But I'm going to take it one step further. Again, you don't have to. You could just coat the back with clear resin if you wanted to, just to seal everything else in. I'm just going to coat mine with a white background. And for that, I'm just using a tiny amount of my homemade white pigment paste. Literally a dab. Now I'm just going to apply that all over the back. If you can't see the black through the white, you've used too much white and you're going to struggle to cure it. That light needs to be able to penetrate through anything that you're putting in your UV resin. So you can see there's not too much white there. It's just to hold everything in, and it also does something to the powders. I'm just going to give that another cure. Okay, so the kind of upgrade to the swipe and wipe using the stencils, I mean, it could get tricky depending on the detail of the stencil. What you could do is roll it out on an existing piece that is the same size as your coaster mold, for example. You could roll a big enough piece out so that it also gives the exact diameter of your coaster. Then you would roll your print or stencil over it, and then you could just cut the circle around and insert the whole sheet of the clay into the mold. Just push it down, make sure that it's sealed, and then pour in your epoxy. I'll show you on a smaller one quickly now. Say for example, I don't know, this bare It's bear footprint. Is that a bear paw? I think it's a bear paw. Let me just interrupt. I forgot a couple of things that you could also use. Cookie cutters, clay cutters, stamps, any texture you've got, your wallpaper, anything. So I've just warmed up another piece. I couldn't be bothered to clean off the other one and reuse it. But you can. So I'm just going to spread that out. And this time I'm not doing it on my silicone mat. I'm actually going to do it inside the mold. So what that will do is create a really good flat surface to the mold. Ideally you want to probably do it in a bigger mold than what I've got here. Make sure it's positioned okay. Out comes the mug to get the shape that we want. But again, you could do this and lay it on top as a sheet instead. Or whilst the paw print is, well, it's cooled down already, just reusing some of this other stuff, you could fill, say, any mold that you want that's small like this. Fill it up with the clay. And then flip it over onto, say, a piece of cured resin and really push it down to create a flat, really flat back. And then wait for that to harden for a couple of minutes. Whilst that's cooling down, I'm kind of going everywhere with this video, aren't I, guys? I hope you're keeping track. I'm just trying to show you all of the potential. You've got the paw print. We can then just take our scissors, and it is that easy to cut. And the back is super flat. And that is important because this stuff can float. So you need it to stick to the mold. So when you tip your resin in, the resin's not gonna get underneath it, and it's not gonna pull away from the mold. That is really important. Then once you've cut it out, you can use the stencil if you want to just get the perfect placement. But you could dust them and then put them in. Just make sure that you're putting them in the flattest side down so that it does, again, just stay put on the mold if you're using epoxy. I'm not going to for the video because I know it will work, and I don't particularly want a bear print coaster. I have no need for one, but it would work. Again, put in as much work as you want with the detail of the stencil, but it will work. You just colour that the same with your mica powders or whatnot, and then fill that up. It's entirely up to you. Or again, if you've got a bigger piece, you can lay it over the back of the resin. You can brush it and then lay it over the back and do it in reverse. It's entirely up to you. So let's see what these have come out like. So these would make, I did a moon as well. So you've got almost instant inlays with a flat back. Again, we can pop that onto a mold. We know it's going to stick. It's not going to go anywhere. And again, you can check underneath to make sure that it's sealed. You can push as hard as you want with this stuff. It's not going to break. And there you've got instant inlays. Once you've used them, pop them off. Use them as many times as you want. This is incredible. So I'll show you the heart in a moment. And yeah, just take a bit of time, just trim off the excess. You've got instant stuff that you can use as whatever you want. Well, as always, give the video a thumbs up, drop me a comment if you haven't subbed. It is free, hit that button for me. Let me know in the comments if you've got any easier ways of doing this maybe in your head. If you need advice or help, ask in the comments and I'll try and break it down in a better way. I know it's been a bit all over the place. So here's the one that I made yesterday. And look at that flash. Absolutely incredible. This one I sanded down because I didn't have my new molds yesterday. And it really does pop.
Again, it's a bit like old-fashioned curtains. And this is the one that we've just done with the green. So you can see how that white finishes it off, and it breaks the two pieces apart really, really well. You could be thinking, okay, we could do that without the putty. Yeah, you can, but you're not going to have that really crisp 3D depth. And you also, if you was to just lay a stencil over the back of your heart and then brush the colours on, when it comes to doing the black detailing, it's going to self-level. You're not going to be able to control it the way that we have here, because it has those borders that it can't spread out from. So it is a unique way of adding some extremely epic details to your resin jewellery or coasters. Hope you enjoyed that one. I will see you for the next one. Bye for now.